Welcome to Strong in the Broken Places. My name is Jeffrey Reuter, and this is episode number 24. We started the week off talking about oxygen, and then in 23 we got into excuses and making excuses, playing the blame game, and we want to talk about owning the outcome in our lives. Today we're going to get into our environment and the difference between becoming a product of our environment and actually having impact on our environment. In 2003 and 2004, I was in a bad spot, and things were beginning to change for me. And I wanted to see what greatness looked like. I wanted to know what made man great, because I knew in my life up until that point, I'd been in prison for about 10 years. I was anything but great. I was on a downhill spiral still. I was in my early 30s, and things were just bad. I was deep off into my addiction. I was still extremely violent. I was, like I said, life in prison, no hope, no light at the end of the tunnel, no nothing. But there was a spark. There was something deep within me that wanted to get out. So how could I let this thing get out? How could I let this manifest myself if the examples around me were not conducive to this sort of positive change that I was seeking? So I had to start. I started to read. I started to read what greatness looked like, and I'm gonna give you a few examples of what greatness looked like. And there are hundreds of examples that I could give, but I'm gonna just focus on a few. The first one is this: uh, a child is born into slavery. The War of the States end, and as a young boy, his father puts him to work because they have to sustain themselves. His father puts him to work, but the boy wants to learn how to read and write, and this is completely outside of the norm of what's expected. And this is a young child who has a desire to learn how to read and write, and his father agrees. He says, yes, you can learn how to read and write, but you're going to do it after working on the farm. So at nighttime, this little boy would walk to his teacher's house in the dark, and he would have to bring his own candle to supply his own light in order to learn how to read and write. So where does this come from? Where does this spark in a person come from, especially as a child? And this is what I wanted to know. This is what I wanted to find out. 30 years later, a girl, a young child, a baby, she's healthy, but before she's able to develop her ability to effectively speak and to communicate, she gets sick. And in the process of getting sick, she loses her hearing and her sight. So she's no longer able to see. She can't hear. She's a small child, and she hasn't even formed her tongue yet, so she can't effectively communicate. 40 years after that, a small girl, a young girl, is forced to go into hiding because of the situation where she's at. So she goes into hiding with her family, and she begins to write. And for the next 4 years, she writes. And she does this until her family is discovered. And she's put in a concentration camp where just a couple weeks before the liberation of Europe, she perishes in a concentration camp. One more example. In the same era, in the same concentration camps, a man comes up with the idea that if he could only grasp on to that one thing that gave his life purpose, he could overcome his situation. And he got this philosophy from a philosopher that penned something about 60 years earlier. And what Nietzsche said that a person can overcome almost any why if he can. A person, if he has a strong enough why, can overcome almost any how. And I'm looking at these four people, and the common denominator between the four of them is that they all became educators. The common denominator between the four of them is that they did not become product of their environment. The common denominator between the four of them is that they had an opportunity, a legitimate opportunity to succumb. They could have succumbed. They could have just laid down and died, essentially. But they didn't. All four of them chose to better themselves. All four of them chose greatness without even really knowing that they were going to become great. And this is what I want to leave you with today before I actually get into the lesson in number 25 is this here, is that we can continue to make excuses. We can continue to say, I'm simply a product of our environment, or we can awaken. We can awaken and we can realize that, hey, I don't have to become a product of my environment. That if I am intentional, instead of having my environment impact me, I can impact my environment. And that is the distinguishing difference between surviving and thriving. We don't want to just survive. We want to learn how to thrive. I know too many people that are just surviving and its existence is a dead end. So let's learn how to thrive. And tomorrow, we're going to talk about, we're really going to get into the meat of this tomorrow. So let's be strong in our broken places and let's be grateful. Let's find something to be grateful for. What are you grateful? Let's do our 3 gratefuls today. So what are you grateful for today? And I'll give you 1. I'm grateful for you. 2, I'm grateful. Look, it's a beautiful day today. We're going to have a beautiful day. And 3, I'm on my way to class. I'm about to graduate, and I'll get into that here soon too. Have a good day and be strong in your broken place.